Welcome to Middlesex Moments from Middlesex Community College in Middletown. I'm Steve Minkler, the college CEO, actually speaking to you from my home as I record this edition of Middlesex Moments. It's a time when our main campus, our Meriden Center, and all other instructional sites are closed due to the COVID-19 pandemic that is sweeping across our community, our nation, and our world. This week, we celebrate Earth Day, Wednesday, April 22nd, on the golden anniversary of this day of recognition, celebration, and action. According to earthday.org, the first Earth Day in 1970 mobilized millions of Americans for the protection of the planet. Some 20 million Americans took part in the first Earth Day in 1970. They took to the streets, college campuses, and hundreds of cities to protest environmental ignorance and demand a new way forward for our planet. The first Earth Day is credited with launching the modern environmental movement and is now recognized as the planet's largest civic event. Earth Day led to passage of landmark environmental laws in the United States, including the Clean Air, Clean Water, and Endangered Species Acts. Many countries soon adopted similar laws, and in 2016, the United Nations chose Earth Day as the day to sign the Paris Climate Agreement into force. Earth Day 2020 finds us in an unprecedented time in human history. More than half the planet's population are sequestered at home. Schools, businesses, and houses of worship are closed to the public. We may be apart, but through the power of digital media, we're almost more connected than ever. On April 22nd, over the 24 hours of Earth Day, the 50th anniversary of Earth Day will fill the digital landscape with global conversations, calls to action, performances, video teach-ins, and much more. Visit earthday.org on April 22nd as we build an Earth Day unlike any other. In the spirit of Earth Day, I'd like to share a special musical performance with you. Take a listen to the poem, The Peace of Wild Things, written by Wendell Berry, a farmer, poet, and environmentalist. The music was composed and performed by Rosemary Minkler.
When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things, who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars, waiting with their light. For a time I rest in the grace of the world, and
You're listening to Middlesex Moments from Middlesex Community College.
At Middlesex Community College, we help students discover their future.
MXCC is our college.
With affordable payment options and easy access, come see how Middlesex can be your college.
MXCC is my college.
Classes in Middletown, Meriden, and online.
MXCC is our college.
Middlesex Community College, your future.
Welcome back to Middlesex Moments, coming to you from Middlesex Community College. I'm Steve Minkler. I'm happy to say, though, the college is open for business as we've moved all of our instruction and all of our student services online. And speaking with me today from his home is Rick Eriksen, a professor in our digital media program. How are you doing today, Rick?
Good, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Now, have things gone for you teaching from home?
It's definitely been a challenge, but for the most part, things are going, they're going well. It's been an interesting transition. I think both, from the perspective of, a faculty person as well as a student, and to be able to actually see how people are handling the transitional, both from a technical standpoint, and then just the bigger picture, the social picture of what people are going through too.
Right.
So it's been pretty unique, but good. We're everybody's moving forward, and that's a good thing.
Well, from a social angle, you have a very engaging personality in a classroom, and I know you have ways that you connect with students when you see them face to face. That's got to be the biggest challenge for you and the students being at home, is maintaining that connection.
You opened up something pretty dear right there in terms of, half of my shtick is really getting a read from the students in the class, and actually, just the subtle pauses that you might see and where their attention, their focus is, and then to have them sort of move through, some folks need to have practice connecting in a social, real environment. And so to have that removed, it's kind of like you got an art. It's an art form, and now all of a sudden a major one of your tools is, in terms of the success to how you can connect with people and get them involved and connected, is out of the picture. And you're like, whoa, okay, how do we pick that up, and how do we keep some of that? So that's been a challenge. That's really been a challenge, because being in little squares of video is not nearly the same as, being in that real experiential place with individuals. So
Well, I think that also is a challenge for a program like digital media production, and you specialize in courses in digital arts and multimedia, where we are teaching students sort of independent skills working on a computer, but also there's a large element of teamwork that happens in this field. And, you can do that remotely, sort of, but I think, we're trying to train students to really know how to engage with each other in the creative process.
I think, it's funny. That's something that actually has to, that I try to do in class, in these digital classes, is to try to, to get people to say, hey, it's important to be in a collective place, right? A room or where we're working and we're not exclusive to the boxes and the technology, because it's so easy to do that. And the reality is that it's rare that once you move beyond just a small project that you're doing, digital creative project that you're doing, into like a real production, it's going to be teamwork. And so that teamwork's either going to happen in a place. So I'm trying to get, the students to in that mode, step away from the digital thing, because you're going to be there a lot in the box, in the computer, and whatever tool you're using. And yeah, connect. But it's funny that and then also to get them into workflow, right? It's not all just about art. The art is also the workflow, how you organize files, how you manage your digital assets, all that stuff. And it's funny, this whole situation, this remote thing, has actually shifted it. So it's like, well, now you see it, you guys. I was trying to get you guys to organize and get into this, and you weren't seeing the reality of it. Well, now the reality of working remotely, organizing, just the workflow, how do you connect and communicate in a way that's not just text with very little context type of thing, because we're so used to, oh, let me just shoot a text to someone. Well, wait a sec, now you have to communicate the changes that need to be made with a visual or some sort of production. And so your communications have to be a little bit more contextual and elaborate. And so all these things are actually, it's hard with the outside social piece. It's hard to actually focus in and say, hey, you guys, this is really a good thing for you that's happening, right? You got to find some creative way of getting them into it to say, hey, no, this is the way, this is legit way we would work in a remote production environment. But it's a lot of stuff.
And Rick, you talked about sort of the larger social context. I mean, this is an extraordinary time where people are told to stay at home and actually consume more media, right?
Yeah, I know. Consume more content.
So when you teach digital media production, I mean, you can walk us through a couple of the classes that you teach, but they all depend on computer technology. And how have students made this transition? Have all of them been able to do a lot of this work from home, or did we have to help some of our students along with whatever software or hardware to make them do their work?
Well, I'll tell you, it's been pretty good. Most of the students have been able to definitely jump into the different way that the classes are happening. I mean, really, classes, at least in my perspective, we're still having sessions. So we're still doing video chats. There's still the sort of the class sessions. It's been a little difficult because, yeah, you know what? There are definitely students that don't have first, they didn't want to do online classes. They don't have maybe the technology or the software, or the hardware. And so in some of those cases, it's been tremendous that the school has stepped up to actually, for some students who are really in tough situations, we've been able to sort of give them a scenario where they can actually do the work, which I think that's been pretty good. But for the most part, so if those cases were handled and we've gotten people connected and then a lot of people are savvy to this text, so they're already there. But it's funny, all of the things that we take for granted, like, is your internet connection decent enough? Are you going to be able to actually have a real live experience, or is it going to be recorded and then you sort of have to utilize you see what you have to do and in terms of the software. But really what we ended up doing, I think in many of my classes, at least 2 or 3, we kind of focused, I brought it back and focused in on it. Look, it's not about how powerful the software is. It's about delivering a creative project. And so if you are in certain circumstances, you're going to be working with a client. One, that client might be remote. 2, you have to work with a specific piece of software. You don't get to pick and choose. You're like, oh, I'll use this piece of software to produce. It's like, no, you know what? Now you're being asked to create, like this last assignment in one class was, okay, we got to generate some propaganda, but it's got to be positive, right? And so what are we going to use? Okay, some of you could jump off into Photoshop, but guess what? No. Let's use this stunted web-based application, right? That's provided for everybody, evening the field out and saying, all right, how are you going to do how are you going to implement basic design functionality? How are you going to think about creating an effective message through artful use of photographs, typography, and to pull people back from the canned template thing. Oh, let me pick this this Snapchat filter, this Instagram filter. I mean, those are totally valid things. I'm not discounting it, but it's nice to be able to open up the hood. It's nice to be able to say, I don't understand everything here, but I can modify it to what I need. And I think actually another really important thing in terms of simplifying and being able to say, hey, let's not get lost in the coolest piece of software that we're using because it's school, we've got it. Oh, and you don't need the system. You don't need the software. But now that we're in our little, we're each kind of in our own little islands. And I would use that joke, like, what shape are you taking to the island? What's it going to be? What piece of software would you, or what keyboard modifier key do you, that's so dorky, but what modifier key would you take to the desert island, right? And so now these students are going, okay, well, I have to use this simplistic web-based thing to create an effective form of media. That's a pretty powerful thing in today's age when you're just pummeled with all sorts of stuff, because it gets to the root. If you want to make this stuff, you have to understand the language. You have to understand how it works, not the tool, but how you successfully put that together. And then for those people who are taking it taking these classes even as an elective, and they don't want to produce it, they don't, this isn't their career, then it's, I come at them with, look, you need to understand how this works, because this is how we are programmed This is how we are manipulated. This is how, and I don't mean that in a negative way. And I really try to give that out to them that, hey, it's not good or bad. It's just, this is how it works. And if you have the language and if you understand how it works at a very simplistic or foundational level, you're going to be a better, creative thinker. You're going to be able to make better decisions. You're not going to be just that.
Yeah, you'll become a better consumer of the media that surround us all the time.
Totally.
So I know we're speaking in a medium that has no pictures, this radio and audio podcast, but can you describe some of the projects that you have students working on? What types of things are they working on?
Well, I mean, the basic, like the DGA 101 folks, it's a twofold thing. They would feel that it's very simple, where like currently right now, it's just taking found photographs, being able to navigate, hey, instead of me going to Google and just ripping off imagery, that way, how do we do it correctly? And what are actually some sites that provide you far better stock material, or obviously going out using equipment you have and really trying to get them to either use their cameras. But then how do you bring in typography or design and make a message, an artful message? So really one class, so for instance, 101ers, they're basically creating simplified photographic designs with typography, and then the workflow of, you need to create a shared folder in a shared cloud-based scenario. There needs to be named directories. You're delivering that file to me in a particular format. So those are you could work with a client. You're understanding things at a deeper workflow level. And then you have a class like, let's say, digital illustration or something like that. And those are higher level folk, and they've been through the ringer a little bit. And so then they're just challenged with, all right, here are tools. This is a part of an aspect of Illustrator patterns, or, effects, 3D effects, within Illustrator. How do we do that? And then they're challenged a little bit more with, actually, they're doing awareness billboards right now. So if they had like a campaign across the town, generate a billboard, generate some media that we know is thematic and connected on one end of the town to the other end of the town. And how do we thread visuals, and how do we thread something so it's not exactly the same, but it's from the same design, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so it's not just a matter of selecting images and manipulating them, but actually creating a message and knowing what the background and the context for that message is in order to reach an audience.
Without a doubt. I would say most of at least the classes that I'm trying to teach are on the surface. If you popped in, it would be like, wow, is this dude just doing a YouTube video on how a particular aspect of the program works? That's surface, but like right underneath that is, okay, how are you going to organize this for me? Because in all honesty, there's two things I'm going to look at if I'm an art director or someone's going to hire someone, is I'm going to look at the portfolio and go, yeah, this person's in the ballpark of, let's say, the creative level that I would want. But more importantly, I'm going to be like, how is stuff organized? How are these things framed within a portfolio? Because the workflow is far more important. If you're bringing someone into an environment and saying, hey, I'll teach you this black box piece of equipment. I'll teach you, we'll morph you into whatever, but you have got to have good communication skills. You've got to be able to organize, asset manage, and you got to be creative and motivated. So all of those things sort of gel together. So that's kind of a little bit of what's happening within the classes, especially now in this scenario, because there's no way I can even, think about just getting a file to get critiqued, there's some trickery to that. What are we going to use? How are you going to name it? It's so funny. The first week I realized I did manage, and that was impressive. I got 100+ students all, obviously sharing me a local drive that was theirs, that is their portfolio, and setting that up and trying to get them to, and I'm sitting here going, whoa, wait a sec. I have to have them name this correctly. I can't have 100+ individual folders named all sorts of crazy stuff. So what became it was part of it was a quiz exercise. Guys, create this folder, but it's got to be named DGA 101 your name, because I can't find this stuff. I have to sort it I'm your client, whoever. I have to sort it a certain way. And so it's been cool to be able to share screens, show them what I'm dealing with as a client, let's say, or someone they're working with, and how their workflow, and not just the pictures and the images and the fun stuff, plays into this entire thing that we're doing. In each one of the classes, Most of the classes have been good. I'll tell you, the advanced classes, like advanced media production, like a capstone class where they're producing, these students were producing their last piece to put into a portfolio. I'll tell you, that's been a difficult class, just because I'm seeing, we've got to, everyone had to modify their projects, and this happened midstream. And so even that's a learning lesson. I mean, it's been difficult for some students without a doubt, but that's been a great way to have dialogue with students in terms of how we have to modify a project because we lost funding, or how do we modify it because any number of issues, and to get them to really go feel the experience that we're going through, which is good, because you don't get that in the classroom. But this is real now.
Exactly.
So it's funny how it's turned into that,
Well, and it is real that we have to take a quick break, too, and that's all part of media production as well. So when we come back, more with my guest, Professor Rick Eriksen from the Digital Media Production Program. You're listening to Middlesex Moments from Middlesex Community College.
Every education is a good education, and you can't take any of that for granted. What I learned about community colleges is that the community part is just as important as the college part. And while I went to community college in an attempt to lift myself up, what I found was that I was surrounded by people and we were lifting each other up.
Welcome back to Middlesex Moments, coming to you from Middlesex Community College. I'm Steve Minkler, together with my guest, Professor Rick Eriksen from the Digital Media Production Program. Rick, we were talking before the break about this shift to online instruction and the kind of projects that you've been working on with your students ordinarily, but let's talk more just about the program. It is a degree program with some embedded specialty certificates. Is this so a student can have a general interest in media but then select some specialty? Is that how this works in this program?
Definitely. I mean, it's a unique setup within the system, and the fact that several years ago when we had set up the wonderful Center for New Media, that we kind of looked at it and said, hey, you know what? It's not so much a niche world out there. It's not like I need to hire just the guy or gal to do audio, right? Or something like that. So one of the things we did is we said, hey, let's look at an overarching way of creating a digital media production degree, and that's the digital media production associates, right? Associate degree, applied science associate degree. And then, but obviously that's even with that idea, you have to have actually some focus. And there's certainly students coming in, right, that want to do audio, or they want to do, I want to be in front of the camera, or I want to do film, video, or digital arts all over the place. So what we figured was, now we have this arching associate's degree. Then you choose certificates. So you share obviously some front end classes and then some capstone classes, but through the program you're actually specializing within the audio production certificate, or the web design certificate, or the multimedia, or the film and video. It's been an interesting way to actually add sort of these, I hesitate saying options because we don't call them options, but they're standalone certificates. And in fact, actually, some students come in. I'm doing it right now, dealing with them right now through advising. They're coming in, they're getting that degree, but they're saying, hey, I want the multimedia design certificate, but I think I also want the film video or the audio. And that's, they're able, partly they want to kind of stick around and they want to take more classes because they're like, hey, this is great. This is fun. This is like, didn't know this was here, My analogy as I go through this is I kind of look at it as the playground. You get into there and you're going, oh, I want to try that. And I want to try that ride. And that's really cool. And so, a lot of people are actually finding that, cool, I'll do two, I'll take some extra classes and I've got a secondary certificate. And honestly, it looks good on paper. I mean, I on the one hand, I look at you look at the resume, look at the CV on someone, and you're saying, all right, well, this person obviously has messed around with, has some audio going on, or there's the digital marketing thing, or the design, Those look good on paper. And then that obviously, the hope is that it also is translating to the really important thing, which is like, can I see some stuff? What is your digital portfolio? What does that look like? The thing that's a little difficult right now is how to keep that hands-on, that playground kind of thing going on when we're removed and isolated. So, but we're still doing it, and it's cool. I think that's a really interesting part of the program as well. Is like, wow, we're all getting together, we're adapting, we're even thinking about the Arts and Media Festival and how to run this thing, in a virtual sort of way. So now we have to produce virtually. So again, but that's kind of the degree. I don't know if we'll have, next year a total virtual certificate. But,
well, and the certificates are also good for people who may already have a degree from elsewhere, right? They may have a degree in something else or maybe even a bachelor's degree, but this lets them in, I think it's 27 or 30 credits, specialize in just this one slice of this big field known as digital media.
Definitely. And I mean, I think that's another really important thing that's happening right now. I mean, there's a ton of people who actually have degrees in let's say, non-digital, non-creative production scenarios, right? Bachelor's, that's great. We're dealing with students all the time coming in who are like, oh, awesome. You don't have to worry about any of that side of the house. You come on in, and this certificate's totally good to go. And it's going to, now you're getting connected to those applications that people want to, let's say, they've never dealt with, let's say, a Photoshop or better yet, an After Effects and animating, and that sort of stuff. Social media, just doing, social media side of the house, web classes. They're able to actually take a certificate and take these, and put that together and really beef up a degree that didn't have the technical production sort of side. And they become that utility belt. They're way more versatile. Now, if I could have a communications person who also knew web stuff and also knew, graphic and design side of the house, that's the person I want.
Now, do all students in the program have opportunities to take internships?
Well, in any of the programs, definitely. Yeah. There are a few where it's an and/or kind of thing, or where you could either do that or do an advanced media capstone kind of project. But for the most of them, there is the internship requirements. That's kind of the capstone last semester, if we're going to be traditional about that, where people have to actually hook up into a media production environment, all right, and then do 120 hours within that realm requirement.
What kinds of places have we placed interns? What kind of businesses?
The rock star realm, that would be like an ESPN, a WTNH, Digital Surgeons. I mean, like those are like, ooh, sound really cool. And those are cool and those are good, right? And those are the ones that a lot of people coming in. But at the same time, I would say, hey, there's some folks that have been placed into some really cool places too, like a community health center, North End Action Team, these places that really need help, need media produced, and are really, having an effect. The internships really, actually, I'm just thinking about, I was talking with a student who was doing an internship down at the local sort of community music place, which is a little bummer right now because we're trying to go, they're not doing, she's still doing work, actually. She's still doing promotion and stuff, but it's a different scene. A lot of our internship scenarios, it's cool. They're adapting to this now.
And we also have something unique at Middlesex Community College in that the students can do, I guess you'd call it an internal internship, because we have a production unit attached to the Center for New Media, right? With the work that Dan does.
Yes, definitely. And I mean, that's a scenario that's kind of growing as we speak, where we're finding, we have more internal productions. All right. Well, first off, actually, one of the interesting things is we have actually internal internships that are connected to, let's say, our corporate wing side, where actually projects will come in and we have to engage 2 or 3 students. And they're not internal school things. They're actually outside professional places coming in, and we're able to connect internally and do that, as well as projects. For instance, I know the beginning of the semester, we had a student who was working on the 360-degree, imagery and tours within the school scenario. And so that was a, kind of an internal internship where you still had to do the production, still had to do the 120 hours. And it was not like a class project. It was, hey, there are milestones, there are meetings, you're a part of the team here, and it's not a student kind of teacher thing. It's just, here we go.
Right. Well, yeah, and they get to work really closely with a guy named Dan Nocera, who's in charge of that unit for the college. And, these are substantial projects, like you said, whether they're either for the college or for agencies that we work with. And if it's projects that are for the college, let's face it, we would have spent some serious money to get these made because, Dan is an award-winning producer and videographer. It's amazing the work that he does.
Yeah, and I mean, just it's funny to see the things too pop up. Whether I think some of the students are surprised to. I know, the last time someone popped into the theater, and saw their wow, hey, I saw the ad we just finished up, and it was 20 feet large on the screen, or those sort of things. So it's nice for the students to even in their internships to be able to see I don't want to say product, but the projects that they're working on out in the real world. And I think that's pretty cool, valuable.
Right. So in the short amount of time we have left, when you see a student come into the program, how do you know that they've got what it takes? Kind of the potential rock star in this program. What kind of attributes or interests should they be showing?
When someone comes in, you quickly can see if they have that motivation. That there's an excitement. It doesn't have to be off the chart. Actually, a little leery when it's too excited and too motivated, right? But there's a little bit of that. They're like, okay, yeah, I really want to do that, and they're excited to show you, not too excited, but they're excited to give you a little bit of, I've done this, I've done that, right? And you're going, okay, this person really has been in or connected to it, or they're really excited to do, get involved. So that's right off the bat. And then when you actually get them into, they start, and then you see that they want more, right? And that's a very, someone who's like, hey, yeah, how does that work? How does that work? Someone who is definitely I want to take something apart, even if I'm going to break it kind of thing. That's a good, that's good, because you're definitely going to self-discover it. And I think that that's something that you really exercise in programs like this. These creative production environments, you're trying to exercise to get people so that they want to hunt and they want to figure things out and they want to go, ooh, what does this do? What does that do? So that they can develop an aesthetic. That's really what we're shooting for. Those folks who want to create, those folks who want to kind of see their visions, in whatever media that is.
That's fantastic. And we currently are registering and accepting students for taking classes with us in the summer or the fall.
Yes.
And we will see where we are with our campus at that point, but we know things are continuing online thanks to all the work that you're doing to make this happen for our students. Professor Rick Eriksen from the Digital Media Production Program, thanks for being with me today on Middlesex Moments, Rick.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And I'd like to thank all of you, our listeners, for joining us for another edition of Middlesex Moments. As always, you can visit us online 24/7 at mxcc.edu, and we hope very soon to be reopening our campus after the COVID-19 crisis. And you can find us on campus at 100 Training Hill Road in Middletown, or at our Meriden Center at Platt High School. So on behalf of Rick Eriksen and everybody at Middlesex Community College, I'm Steve Minkler, and we hope to see you again soon.